Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My deepest apologies for starting a couple of minutes late here. I'm going to blame Ray and his dear lady, Miss Leandria, because they got to talking to me before the class started, and I lost track of time. So anyway, here we are. Welcome back to Foundations of Stocks and Options. We are all the way through it. We've made it to class number 8 of level 1, and that means we're going to get into an excellent discussion that I have titled The Ultimate Dividend. I hope you guys have had an awesome weekend and an awesome Monday, an excellent Tuesday, and we're ready to jump in and rock it out here. Here's the agenda for the day. We're going to take a quick look at an option review, quick review of options. We're going to talk about understanding the option chain. We're going to explore the covered call, and then we will wrap up level 1. So let's do that. Quick question. How many of you took the lessons that we learned in, what was it, Thursday night's class, and you went out and you applied it to your virtual trading, and you started experimenting some with options? Did you guys do that over the weekend? I'm curious to know what kind of experiences you've had. John said he tried it. Anthony's done it. And Dale's just saying hello. So hello, Dale. So several of you have tried it, and Leon's working on it, as did Edmund and a few of the rest of you. So that's fantastic. Keep working on those things. Tonight, we're going to do a quick review, as I've just mentioned, and then I'm going to show you a different strategy, one that I think many of you will gravitate towards. It's called, I've called it the ultimate dividend. It's just building upon the covered call that I introduced you to in the last class. As we jump into this quick review, I'm curious how many of you would consider yourselves intermediate to long-term traders, and you like to hold stock. You don't necessarily call yourself an options trader. You consider yourself a stock trader, and you prefer trading stock, and you may one day want to get into options, but you really prefer stock trading. If that's you, just say that's me or something. Edmund says that's him, as is Kimberly, and Paul gave me a big exclamation point. A lot of you are writing in. Excellent. And those of you who are writing in saying, yes, that's you, the class I'm going to teach you tonight is a way that you can take the stock trades you're doing and start printing money. It is a very, very powerful strategy if you will let it work for you. Some of you are going to look at it and you're going to say there's not enough money in it. And that's okay. I understand. Not every strategy is for everybody. But for some of you, this is the perfect strategy that you've been looking for. So I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. As a quick review, let me give you the definition of the option. We learned in the last class that the buyer of an option purchases the right, but not the obligation, to buy or sell a specific stock at a specific price on or before a specific date. That's the definition that we laid out for the definition of an option in the last class. We went a little bit further and said there's two types of options. We've got call options and we've got put options. The call, of course, is the right to buy a stock, and the put option is going to be the right to sell a stock at a specific price. We went a step further and said not only are there two types of options, the calls and the puts, but we also said there's two sides of the trade. We got the buyer and we've got the seller. If we've got the buyer of a trade, he can buy a call or a put. And if we got a seller of a trade, she can buy a call, she can sell a call or a put. So together, the buy and the seller, the calls and the puts, we get a total of 4 possible trades. You can buy a call, you can sell a call, you can buy a put, you can sell a put. These are the only 4 trades that you can place with options. Buy a call, sell a call, buy a put, sell a put. These 4 trades combined to make every option strategy known to man. So if you hear somebody say, oh, options trading is super complicated, you can say it's really not that complicated. It's just buy a call, sell a call, buy a put, or sell a put. I've only got 4 options. Okay? That's all I've got. Every one of the strategies, the big old thick books that freak you out, every one of those is simply a variation on buy a call, sell a call, buy a put, sell a put. Now, to help you decode whatever strategy you get into, I have this little graph that I call my Rosetta Stone of options trading. And all it is just what happens if you buy a call and what happens if you sell a put in terms of your obligations or your rights. You don't need to necessarily, ultimately you're going to have to understand everything, but right now, if you can just comprehend that if I buy a call option, I have purchased the right to buy the stock. If you will comprehend that, then you understand what a call option is and its basic principle. If you understand that if I buy a put option, I have purchased the right to sell the stock at a specific price. If you understand that, you understand the put in its most simple form. Now let's flip it over to the seller side. If you sell a call, remember we're selling the call to whom? We're selling it to the buyer. If we sell a call to the buyer has purchased the right to buy the stock. You have become obligated to sell the stock to the buyer. So if you can understand that whenever I sell a call option, I'm obligated to sell the stock at that price, great. You understand that side of the trade. And the opposite is true with the put. If you sell a put option, again, you're selling the rights to the buyer. The buyer receives the right to sell. You have become obligated to buy because the buyer has now got the right to sell to you. If you understand these four trades, then you understand the system through which you can walk through, or I should say a little decoder that you can walk through to understand every options trade. Let's say you want to go to a really complicated option trade. For example, a credit spread. If you're familiar with a credit spread is going to look like this. You're going to buy a call and you're going to sell a call. Let's say that you buy a call, or you buy a call maybe at $100, you sell a call at $95. Well, if you get into that trade, you're trying to figure out what's happened here. What are my rights? What are my obligations? It's simple. I sold a call option at $95. I'm obligated to sell the stock at $95. I bought a call option at $100. I have the right to buy the stock at $100. Now you can start to decode that. Whatever strategy you've got, that is a credit spread that I just showed there. If I went into an iron condor, well, an iron condor looks a lot like this. You buy a call, you sell a call, you buy a put, and you sell a put. I need to write all this up here. And let's say that your iron condor looked like this: 100. You sold the $95 call. Let's say you sold the $80 put and you bought the $75 put. Well, if you're trying to figure out, I got four trades here. What do I do with each of these trades? And maybe you get all overwhelmed trying to figure out what's going on. Ask yourself the question: what did I do? Did I buy the call? Did I sell the call? Did I buy the put or did I sell the put? In this case, you did all four of them. This is a strategy. It's a strategy called an iron condor. And there's a lot of these various strategies out there, and you can get super confused about it. But here's what I want you to walk away with from tonight's class: understanding. If I understand buy a call, sell a call, buy a put, sell a put, if I understand that, and I understand that when I buy a call, I have the right to buy the stock. If I sell a call, I'm obligated to sell the stock. And if I buy a put, I have the right to sell the stock. I think I said that backwards. If I buy a call, you have the right to buy the stock. Did I say right to sell? I think I said right to sell. If you buy a call, you have the right to buy the stock. And if you sell a call, you're obligated to sell it. If you buy the put, you have the right to sell the stock. If you sell the put, you are obligated to buy it. If you just understand that little grid right there, you can unpack any option strategy. That is power right there. Now, with that understanding, let's go start to dig a little bit deeper. In the last class, we kind of looked at the four strategy. We looked at Bill selling a call option for his Goldman Sachs shares. We looked at Joe buying the call option as an investment. We looked at Bill buying the put option as an insurance policy. And we looked at Sam selling Bill the put option as a strategic trade. In the end, from last class, we looked at buy a call, sell a call, buy a put, sell a put, and we had names with each of them. Here's what you need to walk away with. Not any of these traders, not a single one of them was specifically right, and not a one of them was specifically wrong. They all had a different outcome. They all had a different strategy they were using. And if you can understand that, then you realize that whenever we start to work with option trades, it's not always a quote-unquote zero-sum game. It's not always if you win, I lose, or if you lose, I win. When we're dealing with options, we're implementing various strategies. What the options do is they provide us choices. And that's literally what the word means. Options means we have choices. And if we've got choices, what do we do with those choices? We can start to combine them into various ways. So what I want you to understand is right now you're at the beginning of your options training. And the options can get confusing pretty quickly, but if you start to step through them, which is what I'm teaching you, if you walk through them step by step, you don't try to get all of it into your mind at once, but we just kind of start to get some key concepts, you're going to start stacking the education and the training will start to build, and before you know it, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to say, I don't know how, but somehow I understand options trading. And if you'll trust me, I promise we'll get to the other side. All right, so that's kind of my review and getting you set up for where we're going next. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to introduce you to the option chain, and I'm going to give you some basic building blocks of understanding options, and then we're going to look at a specific strategy called the covered call, a strategy that I also have nicknamed the ultimate dividend. So let's learn the basic building blocks of options. You understand after the last class that by definition, options give you the right to either buy or sell the stock. If you have a call option, it's the right to buy. If you have a put, it's the right to sell. You understand that from the last class. What you didn't necessarily understand from the last class is a word that we call premium. What is the premium? Premium is the amount of money that is going to be paid in exchange for the option. I'll let that sink in. It's the amount of money paid in exchange for the option. What is the option? Remember, the option is the right to either buy the stock, that's a call, or the right to sell the stock, that's a put. So if Ron comes in and he says, hey, Jeremy, I want the right to buy a stock, he's going to buy a call option and he's going to have to pay an amount of money. Ron, what are we going to call that amount of money? If we have to go pay for the right to buy something, we're going to call that the premium. That is the amount of money that Ron is paying for the right to go buy the stock. If Dale shows up and says, hey, I want to protect myself, I want the right to sell the stock, great, Dale, you're going to have to pay for that right. You're going to pay, what do we call it, Dale? We're going to pay the premium. The premium is simply the amount of money you pay for the option. And you guys are used to this. You're used to paying a insurance premium. If you buy car insurance or homeowners insurance or life insurance or any other kind of insurance, what do you pay every month or every year or sometimes every 6 months? You pay your insurance premiums. Well, think about it the same way. Whenever you buy an insurance premium, you have the right that if some little 16-year-old pulls out in front of you and smashes up your brand new BMW, you have the right to call your insurance company, be it Geico or State Farm or whoever. You have the right to call them and say, hey, Geico or State Farm or whoever you are, you sold me an insurance policy. I paid a premium. I'm going to take my $500 deductible, and you're going to buy this car from me, and you're going to give me fair value so I can go buy another one. How many of you understand the principle of car insurance or homeowners insurance? You guys get that because you're used to doing it. Think about the stock option as the same thing. The stock option is simply the right to buy the stock or the right to sell the stock. And in exchange for that right, you're going to do what? You're going to pay a premium. Now, who's going to receive the premium, Edmund? Edmund, who's going to receive the premium? If you're buying an option, you're paying the premium. Someone's got to do what? They got to receive it. You're not just going to pay it to the broker. You're going to pay it to the seller. So the buyer of the option is paying money, and in exchange for the money, the buyer of the option receives the option. That's the value that the buyer is getting in exchange for the dollars that they're spending. The seller of the option is going to receive the money from the buyer. Why? Because the seller is selling the option. So the seller receives the money, and in exchange for that, the seller gives up the rights because the seller has sold those rights to the buyer, and the seller becomes obligated to the buyer. Let's take a little cartoonish visual example here. So let's say that we've got a couple people here. I don't know if they've got names. We'll call them Bill and Fred. I don't know. We'll make them up. But we got Bill over here, and he says, okay, I brought the money. I'm the buyer. I'm going to pay some money, and in exchange for the money, I'm going to get some rights. Then we got the guy over here in the little tie with the glasses, and he says, okay, I'm ready to take on the risk. Just sign this contract. What's the contract? The contract is the option contract. So the rights are transferred over to the buyer. The money is transferred over to the seller. The seller receives the money and takes on the obligation. The buyer pays the money and receives the rights, which is the option. Does anybody not understand that principle? All we're doing is we're trading a contract that we call an options contract. That contract has a title. It's either a call or a put contract. The call is the type of contract that is written if you want the right to buy the stock. The put is the type of contract that's written if you want to sell the stock. The buyer pays the money, gets the contract, gets the rights, gets the option. The seller receives the money, takes on the obligation because they sold the contract. That's not that complicated when you think about it. But it sure is easy to make complicated if we want to make it that way, don't we? Or isn't it? Is there anybody here that's making it a little complicated and you need more explanation, or you think we're good on that? Because if you understand that basic principle, you really understand options. We've gone quite deep now when you think about it. We understand the definition of the option. We understand the call side. We understand the put side. We understand the seller side and the buyer side. Now you're seeing that the rights are being exchanged for the money. The money's trading hands. The rights are trading hand. I think we're pretty clear. Okay? So you can come back to this little segment if you need to review it in the video, but I think we're pretty clear on what's happening. Now let's talk about the details. Whenever we trade an option, we literally, and I mean literally, are trading a contract. In the old days, before nice electronic exchanges, back in the 40s and the 50s, whenever people still did stuff with a pen and paper, you know what Tim and Mark would do if they wanted to trade an option? Tim would say, hey, I got all these shares. I'm willing to sell a call option against them. Mark would say, I'd like to buy some options. Mark would go down to the brokerage house, and Mark would somehow get connected with Tim, and they would write up a contract, a literal contract that said Tim is selling Mark the right to buy the stock. And then Mark would take that contract and he would sign it, and he would say, thanks, Tim, for selling me this contract. And then Mark would pay Tim the money. And now Mark is Tim, I should say, is contractually obligated to fulfill that contract that he just wrote. Have any of you ever done this with real estate? This is a very typical contract in real estate. In fact, I bought 2 properties not too far back with this very same principle. We just used an option. It is a contract for the right to buy the property at a specific price. All we're doing is we're taking that and we're putting it into the world of stock. But here's the difference. The difference in the old days when we would literally write a contract by hand versus today is this keyword called the exchange. In fact, I tell you what, I'll do a little divergent teaching here. The exchange is sitting here in the middle to standardize the contract. And what the exchange does is they say, this is the standard of the contract, and now it's not just this weird off-the-wall contract between Tim and Mark, but rather it is a standardized contract, and if Dale wants to get involved, Dale knows that he's trading the same kind of contract that Tim and Mark are trading. The exchange standardizes the contract, and they provide security, or you can just call it a guarantee, however you spell guarantee these days, a guarantee for the counterparty. In the old days, whenever there was no exchange involved, you might have Tim over here and you got Mark over here, and they come up with an agreement, and they're just simply doing this. The money goes one way and the rights go the other way. Okay? That's the old days. Well, in the new days, whenever CBOE comes along and standardizes it, CBOE is Chicago Board Option Exchange. What the CBOE does is they provide a standardization. Back in the old days, Tim and Mark, they could have done this for 98 shares if that's what they wanted to do. It could be weird. But they do it for 98 shares. Dale may not want to come along and do that thing. So what the exchange does is they guarantee it. And so now here's what it looks like today. Today it looks like you got Tim over here, and Tim goes and talks to his broker. His broker brings him into the deal, usually via a market maker. The market maker is dealing with the exchange, who's guaranteeing the deal. That's EXCH for the exchange. And then over here, you got a broker. And then you got the client, which we'll call Mark. I think I drew this out in the last class for you guys because you had some questions. All right, so what happens? The broker is going to take a fee. They're going to take a commission in here. It'll be something like $9.99, something similar to that. All right, I probably shouldn't have squared that, but I did. Mark is going to, let's say Mark, I forgot, was Mark the buyer? Yeah, Mark was the buyer. Okay, Tim is the seller. Okay, so Tim comes along and says, hey, I want to go sell some call options. He calls his broker, says, broker, I want to sell these options. The broker takes those options to the market maker, who's sitting there matching the market. And then Mark comes along and says, hey, I want to buy some options, who tells his broker. The broker then brings it to the market maker. But let's say that Mark is only willing to pay $1 for it. And let's say that Tim has said that he wants a minimum of $1.75. What do you think that market maker is going to do? That market maker is going to go out there and shop it. And that market maker may have another broker down here and another broker down here. And they're going to have a book, and they're all feeding in here. And this broker may be representing Dale. And this broker may be representing Sam. And all these people are putting their bids in. Well, it turns out that Dale, he's a buyer. And it turns out that Dale was willing to pay market. He just said, I'm willing to do a market price. And so Dale was able to get in here. The market maker marked it up. Forget Mark, he never made it in there. Market maker charges Dale $1.80. He pays Tim $1.75. Market maker makes 5 cents in the middle. That's called the spread. And the exchange makes their exchange fee in the middle. And the exchange just guarantees the whole thing. That's how all this flow works. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that help you guys out? That kind of tied together what we dealt with in the last class as kind of a side note. And now what you see is the market maker is making the market, literally. They're like an auctioneer who's saying, broker 1, what are you willing to do? Broker 2, what are you willing to do? And they're matching the buyers and the sellers. Okay? So what we've got now, getting back to kind of our main slideshow here, the contract is the instrument that is being traded. The exchange standardizes it so Tim and Mark can't go do a weird deal. Instead, Roxanne and Tim and Dale and Gary and Edmund and Gene and all the rest of you, you're doing the same deal. And here's what that deal looks like. That deal looks like you're dealing with 100 shares of stock in every contract. Standardized. That's what the exchange does. The exchange says, here's the standards that we're going to play by. When we trade an option contract, if you're going to trade it through the exchange and you're going to get all the benefits of the counterparty guarantees and everything that the exchange provides, then we're going to have some standardization so we can create some liquidity. So the exchange standardizes it, and the standard option contract is 100 shares. Today, we don't trade a physical contract. Today, whenever you sign all those disclaimers and disclosures at the beginning of opening your brokerage account, you're signing a disclosure that says, if I trade an option contract, then I agree to the terms of that contract. That's basically what you're saying. And so then you can go in there, and instead of having to sign for each contract, you can just go say, Tim says, hey, I want to go sell three call options. And it's no big deal. He doesn't have to go sign a paperwork for 300 shares of calls. No, he just says, I want to sign 3 contracts, and boom, buy, sell, whatever you want to do. And so it becomes very fast, and we can deal with it because it's all been standardized through the exchange. And that's how all these players start to work together. Okay? Options Clearing Corp, all they do, they just clear it. They just they do the paperwork. Just consider it the paperwork. That's all they do. They're not really a player in terms of making it happen. I drew out the players. The players are the individuals, the broker, usually a market maker, and the exchange. Now, there's another way this could go. Gosh, I'm a little off on a tangent here, but maybe this is valuable. The other way it could go is you could have a seller and a buyer. You can have a broker, and those brokers could go directly to the exchange. Some brokers do that. For example, TradeStation has the option to go directly to the exchange. And so some brokers will do this. They have a market maker option, and they have a direct dealing option where they can go straight to the exchange. All right, does that help you out there? Does that kind of explain some of that? But then once it's all done, it comes over here, OCC, Options Clearing Corp. They do all the paperwork. They make sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and they make sure that broker A didn't screw broker B because they are guaranteeing the exchange, blah, 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 making sure that everybody's playing fair. And here's why you don't screw the exchange, because if you screw them, you're not playing this game again. So the exchange creates that stability. All right, so let's continue here. I think that gave you an interesting, it was a side little tangent there, but I think it was valuable in understanding how the options market as a whole work. This class in particular was asking those questions, so I think it was valuable. When we're trading an option, we're literally trading a contract. And in today's world, that contract is standardized. Today, one contract is going to represent 100 shares. Now, something that's confusing is the options are still priced in shares. So you're going to see an option quote, and that option quote may look like $1.50 per share. But it's not $1.50 to buy the option. It's $1.50 per share to buy the option. And there's how many shares in one contract? There's 100 shares in a contract, right? And so we know that option is actually going to cost $150 because it's 100 times $1.50 or whatever the price of the option is. So options are priced in shares. But once you get used to that, and it doesn't take a lot of work, once you get used to it, it's easy to start doing that math. Now, we always multiply the per share price by 100 to get the real option price. So let's go do an example here. In my example, the option is selling for $5.99 a share. Gene, are you the one that was asking about the bid and the ask in the last class? Sometimes, everybody's names start to run together. And I forget who I'm talking to. Okay, it was Gene. Wonderful. Gene was asking the bid and the ask. So let's just keep carrying this little story forward here. The market maker is providing the bid and the ask. The bid is the price that you do what, Gene? Do you buy or sell at the bid? We sell at the bid, and we typically purchase at the ask. Okay, so the market maker has this spread to work with. And as the stock goes up and the stock goes down, these spreads are going to be changing. Now, the market maker has to work here. There's about a 5-cent spread. And the market maker has got to go work with brokers to get the brokers and the clients that they're representing to come to an agreement here. So the market maker is auctioning between the brokers to say who's willing to buy for this, who's willing to sell for this. Now, it's all electronic today, and so you don't have people standing there yelling out the price most of the time. Most of this is done electronically. But that's what's functionally happening here. Does that make sense? You guys clear on that? And so, Gene, when you say, well, what's the purpose of the bid and the ask? Well, that's what the market maker has to work with. When people start complaining about the market maker, I always say, give the market maker a break. Maybe he's scalping a penny here or there, but I promise a penny on your 100 shares isn't what's making him rich. He's not out there to screw you. He's just trying to make the market. He's trying to match Dale and Tim and decide if Dale and Tim are a better match or if it's Tim and Edmund. That's all the market maker's trying to do. So get off the market maker's back. They're just trying to make the market. That's all they're doing. And that's what you see reflected in the bid and the ask. All right, so the option price in this case, since we're buying at the the $5.99 price. We're going to buy at the ask. It's going to be $5.99 per share. So, Gene, if you want to go buy one contract, how much is one contract going to cost you for this particular option? Doesn't matter what the stock is, just how much is one contract going to cost Gene? It's going to be $599. You're absolutely correct. Everybody who wrote that in, you're totally correct. $599. Why? Because one contract represents 100 shares. If you don't like that, if you don't want to trade 100 shares, well, by golly, you don't have to trade through the exchange. You can go see if Tim will do a private deal with you, but I've met Tim, and I don't think he's going to do that. Most people want to trade through the exchange. There's a lot of reasons to do it. It's a lot better, more stable, more secure. So you want to trade through the exchange. So you're going to play by the rules, which means you're going to trade 100 shares in your contracts. Now, Dinesh, let's go a step further. What if you wanted to trade 10 contracts? How much would 10 contracts cost you? Well, you just got to do the math. The option price is $5.99 a share. One contract is 100 shares, so one contract's $5.99. 10 contracts is 10 times that. 10 contracts would be $5,990. Now, again, it's priced in shares, and you're always going to see it quoted in shares, and that's what you want to see. You want to see it quoted in shares, and then you're going to do the math and figure out, how much is it going to be per contract. All right, and by you do the math, your broker does the math for you. They're going to tell you. All right, let's talk about the option chain. The option chain is where all of the information that you need to know about your option is going to live. Everything is in here. There are some key components. For example, Gene, you're going to find things like the bid and the ask price. That's the quote. If you ever hear someone say, what's the quote, Gene? They're asking, what is the bid and the ask? That is the quote, the buy and the sell quote, the bid and the ask. You're going to see the last price. You're going to see things like the change, the volume, open interest, the strike price, expiration month, and you're going to see the Greeks. Let's walk through these, and we'll go into some more details later. But for now, let's just kind of hit the key ones here. I want to talk about, well, just take a look at this picture first before we go any further. Just look at that. That's what your typical option chain is going to look like. Something similar to this, a variation, but it will be very similar or identical to that picture. Okay? So, let's talk about the strike price. The strike price is the price at which you have the right to buy or sell the stock. The price at which. So, remember the definition of the option is the right to buy or the right to sell the stock at a specific price. That specific price is what we call the strike price. And those strike prices, just like the contract sizes, those strike prices are set by the exchange, not by you. And they're going to be even round numbers. Sometimes they're going to be dollar by dollar. For example, if you're trading the spiders or you're trading the diamonds or most ETFs, it's going to be dollar by dollar. So you look at this strike or this option chain over here, you see 33, 34, 35, 6, 7, 8, etc. Okay, it's dollar for dollar. Some strike prices are going to be spaced out a little bit, and there's a standard for that, but we'll talk about that later. Right now, I just want you to understand that the strike price is the price at which you've got the right to buy or sell the stock. All right, so let's say we purchase a $135 call option. The $135 call option is going to give you the right to buy the stock at $135 a share. All right? Now, if I want to know how much that can cost me, I just come over here and say $135. Well, the ask price is at $4.25. So for $4.25, I have the right to buy the stock at $135 a share. And that's the way that works. The next thing we want to talk about is the expiration date. Or the expiration. Expiration is the day on which the option expires. This is also standardized by the exchange. Expiration. Standard expiration is the third Friday of the month. You come along and someone says, hey, I'm trading January options. You know January options expire on the third Friday of January. Someone comes along and says, hey, I'm trading December options. You don't have to guess. You know the third Friday of December is when that option is going to expire. It's not questionable. You know exactly when. Now, there's an exception called the weekly option. And the weekly option is going to expire on the Friday of the respective week. So if it's a week 1 option, then it will expire on Friday of week 1 of that month. If it's a December week 2 option, it will expire on the second Friday of December, or December week 2, however it lays out there. You understand what I'm saying? So bottom line is it expires on the respective Friday of that week, the upcoming week. It used to be that weekly options were only issued 1 week out. Now they issue them 4 weeks out, so we've got more time to trade those. And I actually do teach how to work with weekly options in our more advanced class, Options Made Simple. But what you need to know about it is they expire on the respective week, whichever one that is. But standard expiration is the third Friday of the month. All right, let's talk about this thing called open interest. What is open interest? Open interest refers to the number of outstanding contracts that are available for trading. Now, open interest is a mystery to a lot of people. It's not really that complicated, but it's a mystery. So let's see if we can explain it. Let me give you a different definition before I start explaining it too. Another way of thinking about it. Open interest, again, is the number of outstanding contracts. So how do contracts become outstanding? Well, somebody comes along and sells them. So if Tim comes along and sells some contracts, then we've got an increase in open interest. That means there's additional contracts out there. So let's go through my example here. At the open, let's say the open interest is 0. Okay, so our open interest is 0 at open. Bill comes along and decides he's going to sell 10 new contracts of XYZ. The fact that he sells it to Phil doesn't really matter, but he sells it to Phil. So there's now 10 contracts of whatever it is that Bill has sold, XYZ stock. So you got 10 as the open interest for that particular option. Okay, now, a couple days later, or maybe later in that day, Jane comes along and she sells 5 contracts of XYZ to Jeff. Who cares the names? The point is that Jane comes along and she opens up 5 new contracts. Our open interest has increased to 15 because we had Bill's. That was 10. Now we've added Jane's in there. Now, Jeff decides he's going to sell 2 of his. Well, Jeff, remember, had bought them from Jane, so he's closing 2 of his 5. He sells them to Pablo. Pablo's not opening new contracts. They're just transferring ownership, so the open interest did not change. Now, Phil decides he's going to go exercise all 10 of his, so since he's closing them out, and they're actually disappearing, he's exercising them. We're going to take 10 away from the open interest. We're down to 5. You guys understand that principle? What's happening here is as new contracts are opened, there's more available to trade. And as contracts get closed, there's less available to trade. If the contracts get traded to someone else, then that open interest doesn't change. But if the contract gets exercised, then the open interest is getting closed because the contract is getting closed. Open interest is an important number because it tells us how much liquidity is out there. If you're trading an option and there's 15 open interest, you don't want to go buy 10 of those because you are the predominant market player. You're going to want to go play in a space where there's several hundred or several thousand contracts that are in circulation. You go trade something like the spiders, and you're going to see the open interest is 100,000 or more. So you're going to have some really good liquidity on those trades. You go trade something that's a little more obscure, maybe a great stock like Alaska Airlines. You know, Alaska's a great stock. It's done really, really well, but the open interest on the options is just kind of very mediocre. You may have a 50 or 80. And that's not going to have the same kind of liquidity that you want. So open interest is an important number. Another, it's not the same, but it's kind of something a lot of you will understand, is the metaphor of outstanding shares. Outstanding shares is how many shares have been issued from a company. Open interest is kind of like the number of outstanding options. Does that make sense? But the difference in outstanding shares and open interest is open interest can go up and down, and it does not change the price of the option. If you have shares that are being issued, then you're dealing with stock splits. All right? So that's open interest. Hopefully that that brought some clarification to you of how open interest builds and closes. Okay? No, Dinesh, we're talking about open interest for option. This open contract for a stock. You mean stock versus a futures option, Dinesh? I think I got confused there. This we're talking about options, open interest. They are stock options. Did I clarify that? Dinesh will write back in if he's still confused. All right, let's talk about the Greeks. Here's the Greeks. We're not going to go through them. We're not going to learn about them tonight. I'm going to teach them later, but I'll list them off for you. You might hear about option Greeks, delta, theta, gamma, vega, rho, and then implied volatility. These are some numbers that kind of help come up with the pricing of the option. We're not going to go into great detail on option pricing tonight because it's a complex subject. And I've got other more advanced classes that I will get to in the Foundations program that teach it. So I just want to acknowledge, this slide is really just to acknowledge that, yes, I will teach you the Greeks, but I'm going to teach you the Greeks in a later class. That way I'm not sitting here fielding questions every 5 minutes about, are we going to learn about the Greeks? All right, let's come over here and let's kind of unpack this option chain just a little bit. Let's do some examples. We'll do some math, and maybe you'll kind of synthesize some of this stuff, and it will all start to gel for you. All right, so let's start. This is an option chain for the spiders, and we know this is for the spiders because you see SPY up here. We know that everything on the left is calls because it says calls. We know that everything on the right is puts because it says puts. So all this is it's a grid that explains the calls and the puts and their pricing. Okay, so let's come down here and let's say we want the right to buy the spiders for a September expiration at $136 a share. Well, where are we going to go to find that? Well, we're going to come to the month. This one happens to be the September expiration. And then we're going to come down here to $136 per share. There you have that. Okay. Now, we want the right to buy. So the strike price is $136. The right to buy is what kind of option? Gene, are we trading a call or a put if we want the right to buy? Call or a put, class? We want the right to buy. Which option is it? It's a call option. You're totally correct. So we're going to come over here. We're going to look to the left. And there's all the data that we need. There's our quote for our call option. Now, let's just look up here at the top. The bid by ask is $4.88 by $4.90. So, Gene, the spread on this is only 2 pennies. That's not too much. I think the market maker can make 2 pennies. I'm okay with that. The last price is just like your stock quotes. It's the last price the option traded, which is $4.86. You notice that's lower than the bid and the ask. That's okay. The bid and the ask are going to be changing. But just because the bid and the ask are changing doesn't mean that the option's traded at that price. The last is the actual last price that the option traded. The next category or the next column is your change. In this case, it's green because the stock was going up and the option was going up. This option was up 12 cents from the day before. The last price is 12 cents higher than yesterday's close. That's what that means. Okay, now the volume, this is simply the number of contracts traded today, 516. And Dinesh, here you go. Here's that number, 41,460 open interest. That tells us that there's 41,460 of those contracts floating around out there. That's a lot of liquidity with an option. That's a lot. Okay, so there's plenty of options to trade. And by the way, if there's 41,000 option contracts, what would we multiply to ask how many shares that would represent? We'd multiply by 100 because remember, each one of those is a contract, and each contract represents 100 shares. Okay? All right, so now let's do an example. How much would it cost us to buy one of those contracts at 136? How much would it cost us to buy that, Gene? Well, we're going to come down here to $4.90. That's per share. I want one contract. How much is it? $490. $490 is what John said. What do the rest of you think? John was correct. $490 to buy one contract. Okay, let's do another call option. I want the right to buy the Spiders at $140 a share. How much am I going to pay if my bid is $247 and my ask is $248 for 10 contracts? I want 10 contracts of the $140 option. How much are you going to pay for that? Go ahead and do your math. Play some Jeopardy music in your mind. Do, 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 do. All right, $2.48 a share. So let's think about it. We're going to be buying. So we're buying at $2.48. I'll mark this in green so you know where I'm drawing here. $2.48 a share. $2.48 times 100 equals $248. I want times 10 because I said 10 contracts. So that's $2,480. If you got anything other than 2,480, I love you. You're going to get this, but this particular one you got wrong. It's 2,480. Okay, yes, plus commissions, but we're talking about just the contract itself. All right, let's do a put option here. I want the right to sell Spiders for August expiration at 141. Somebody please tell me, if I've got a 141 put option, how much is it going to cost me to have the right to sell this stock at $141 a share? What's it going to cost me? Can you guys read that? It may be a little bit small. I'll give you the quote. It's $3.34 by $3.37. How much is it going to cost me to buy the right to sell the stock? Some of you need to think about that question. One contract. If you say anything other than $337, then you're off. $337 is the answer. $337. Why? Because we're buying, and we're going to buy at the ask price. Let's go sell one. David, I want the right. Sorry, I don't want any rights. I'm going to sell. I'm going to sell the right to somebody else. So I'm going to take on the obligation to buy, and I'm going to sell somebody else the right to sell me the stock, and I'm going to sell them that put option for a $135 strike price. How much money am I going to bring in if I sell 5 contracts of the $135 put option? I'm going to go sell 5 of them. What do I bring in? Hey. Oh, well, we're going to have to put some brains power into this one, aren't we? I tricked you up here. All right, 84 cents times 100 equals how much? $84? Okay. I haven't fallen off my rocker, right? 84 cents times 100, still $84? All right, so 84 cents times 100 times what? How many contracts? Times 5, thank you. Times 5 contracts equals what? 4. If you came up with anything less than 420, anything more than 420, check your math. That's how we do it. How many of you think you understand option pricing quotes? I understand that you don't know how to figure up the price yet. I haven't gotten into how option pricing is, calculated, but how many of you understand this in terms of you can go figure out how much you're going to have to spend or how much you're going to make? Okay, let's just do a different example. This is a different option chain. I just want you to see another perspective. This is options express. Those others were options house. Notice how similar this is. You got your strike prices right down the middle. You got your puts on the right. You got your calls